I've spent most of my life working as a security guard. Not exactly a glamorous career, but it covers the bills. Gas stations, convenience stores, small shops, mostly jobs where you sit around watching for trouble. Then I spotted an ad for a night shift at the local mall and thought I'd finally found something better. The pay was great, far better than anything I'd had in years, and the hours were decent too. 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., just one building to watch over, which I figured would be quiet and easy. How hard could it be? I could already picture myself in the security office, monitoring cameras and strolling through vast, silent corridors. I applied immediately and got a call the next day from the manager, Mr. Hensley, asking if I could come in for an interview that afternoon. It felt sudden, but I didn't question it. I needed the work, and the mall was close by. Driving over, I couldn't shake the thought that things were moving too quickly. Was the mall really so desperate for a night guard? The interview was brief, almost hurried. Hensley asked about my experience but seemed distracted. He listed the basics: check cameras every 15 to 30 minutes, do hourly patrols, nothing unusual. Then he looked at me and asked, "Can you start tonight?" That surprised me. Most jobs take time for paperwork or background checks, but I wasn't going to argue. "Sure," I said, trying not to sound too eager. He seemed relieved. "We're understaffed," he admitted, rubbing his temples. "Last few guards didn't last. I hope you'll be different." His words made me pause. What exactly did that mean? Before I could ask, he handed me the office key and told me to be there at 11 p.m. sharp. The sooner I started, the sooner I'd get paid, I reminded myself. I shook his hand, left the office, and went home to catch a few hours of sleep before my first shift. When I pulled into the mall's parking lot that night, the place felt like it belonged to another world entirely. In the daytime, this space was a bustling sea of cars, horns, and chatter, but now it stretched out before me as a vast, hollow desert of asphalt. A handful of vehicles sat scattered under the dim orange pools of light from the tall parking lamps, their shadows long and still. The emptiness seemed to swallow sound. Even the faint hum of the lamps felt strangely loud. The air had that cool, stagnant heaviness of a place that had been asleep for hours. The building itself loomed in the darkness, its huge glass facade catching faint reflections from the lights outside. In the silence, it looked less like a shopping mall and more like a slumbering giant, cold, unmoving, and faintly menacing. For a brief moment, I considered turning the car around and heading back home. Something about the stillness felt wrong, like walking into a place where you weren't welcome. But I told myself it was nothing more than first-day nerves. I locked my car, adjusted my jacket, and walked toward the employee entrance at the side of the building. My footsteps echoed sharply on the pavement, the sound far too loud for the quiet night. The door opened just as I reached it, and there stood Mr. Hensley, the manager. He didn't waste time with small talk, just nodded for me to follow. His shoes tapped rhythmically against the floor as we moved through a series of narrow, winding back corridors lit by humming fluorescent bulbs. The walls felt close, the air faintly smelling of cleaning chemicals and dust. As we walked, Hensley ran through the basic security protocols again, his voice flat, rehearsed. Finally, we arrived at the security office. A cramped, windowless room tucked at the far end of the mall. Inside, a long desk was crowded with monitors showing grainy black and white footage from cameras stationed throughout the building. Most of the images were static scenes, still escalators, dark storefronts, the faint gleam of the polished floors under the emergency lights. "Check the cameras every 15 to 30 minutes, Hensley reminded me. "Do your rounds, make sure nothing's out of place, standard stuff." He hesitated, then added, "And keep an eye on the escalators in the play area. Things happen there sometimes." That last part made me glance at him. "Things happen?" He waved a hand dismissively. "Kids, usually, sneaking in after hours, messing around. You'll see." I nodded, though the way he said it made my skin prickle slightly. He handed me a printed sheet of instructions, standard security guidelines, then shook my hand again. "Good luck, I'll see you in the morning." The door closed behind him, and just like that, I was alone. The silence settled over me like a heavy blanket, muffling everything but the faint buzz of the monitors. I sank into the chair, leaning forward to flip through the camera feeds. Every view was still, unmoving, the kind of emptiness that should have felt comforting. For a few minutes, it was easy to believe this was going to be an easy shift, just a big, empty building to babysit. That's when I felt it, the subtle weight of someone standing behind me. I spun around, heart lurching, and came face to face with a man in a janitor's uniform. He grinned, clearly amused at my reaction. "Didn't mean to scare you, buddy," he said lightly. "You must be the new guy." I forced a chuckle, trying to calm my pulse. "Yeah, that's me. Didn't realize there was a janitor here at night." He shrugged, They always keep one of us around. Gotta clean up, make sure everything's ready for morning. Then his tone shifted, becoming oddly serious. Just make sure you follow the rules. I frowned. The rules? You mean the instructions the manager gave me? He shook his head slowly, pulling a crumpled, worn piece of paper from his pocket. Not those. These. I took it from him, the paper warm from his hand. There was something unsettling in the way he looked at me, like he was weighing whether I could handle whatever was written there. These aren't from the manager, he said quietly. These are the rules you'll need if you want to make it through the night. I unfolded it, half expecting some kind of prank. But what I saw wasn't funny. Rules to keep you safe at night. Rule 1. Check the security cameras every 15 to 30 minutes but never stare at the footage for too long. Rule 2. Never look directly at the mannequins after midnight. If you notice any mannequins have moved or changed position, leave the area immediately. I looked up, uneasy. You're serious? The grin he'd worn earlier was gone. I'm warning you. Follow the rules, or you'll end up like the last guy. I gave a nervous laugh. You mean the last guard? He nodded once, his eyes colder than I expected. He quit after one night. I tried to shake it off, forcing a smile. Well, I guess I'll go make my first round. He stepped aside, but his gaze lingered on me. Take care, he said, and something about the way he said it made my stomach knot. As I stepped into the corridor, the crumpled list still in my hand, his words echoed in my mind. There had been something in his tone. Not a joke, not a warning for fun, but genuine fear. I stuffed the paper into my pocket, telling myself I wasn't going to let some strange, superstitious list mess with my head. It was just a mall, just a quiet, empty building. But deep down, I wasn't so sure anymore. It was a little past midnight when I began my first real patrol of the night. The mall was far more unsettling in darkness than I had prepared myself for. The daytime buzz, the chatter of shoppers, the clatter of footsteps, the music drifting from open storefronts, was replaced by something altogether different. Now, the silence ruled here, broken only by the faint hum of the overhead fluorescent lights. The dim, sporadic lighting painted the tiled floors with long, twisted shadows that writhed and stretched as I moved. Every noise seemed exaggerated. My footsteps echoed like gunshots down the empty halls. The air conditioning's low whine felt louder than it should, and the occasional creak from the building's metal framework made my heart give an involuntary jolt. The mall wasn't massive, but it was big enough to warrant steady patrols. It wasn't just the size, it was the number of places for things to hide. Some stores were brightly lit during the day but now sat in total blackness, their displays barely visible through dark glass. A few were shuttered permanently, abandoned spaces that looked more like empty caves than retail shops. I passed the children's play area near the food court. By day it was a place filled with noise, laughter, and the smell of greasy fries drifting from nearby eateries. Tonight it was frozen in time. The colorful plastic slides and climbing frames sat motionless under the pale glow of the emergency lights, casting strange, warped shadows. Without the children, the place had an eerie, artificial stillness, like a cheerful photograph left too long in the sun. Farther down, I caught sight of the escalators, the same ones Hensley had told me to keep an eye on. They stood perfectly still, frozen mid-ascent, their brushed metal surfaces dull in the low light. They looked almost ancient now, relics from a busier, warmer time. I was beginning to grow accustomed to the rhythm of the empty mall when I saw it, something out of place. One of the clothing store doors was wide open. I stopped in my tracks. All the stores were supposed to be locked and secured after hours. Frowning, I swept my flashlight's beam into the dark interior. Racks of neatly arranged clothes stood like tall, thin shadows. At first glance, nothing seemed disturbed. I took a step forward, light flicking between displays when something stirred at the edge of my vision. A faint movement, a shift, subtle, like someone retreating into the darkness. I snapped my head toward it. Nothing, just a row of mannequins at the far end of the shop standing silently in their rigid poses. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. It was nothing, my nerves playing tricks on me. The janitor's strange rules had clearly wormed their way into my head more than I wanted to admit. That's when I heard it. A faint rustling sound. Clothing. The flashlight beam swung back toward the mannequins. One of them wasn't where it had been before. It stood slightly apart now, closer to the center of the aisle. My pulse quickened. "Hey, Mr. Janitor," I called, my voice bouncing down the quiet hall. "Funny joke." Silence. No answering laugh, no footsteps approaching. Just that faint, soft whisper of fabric shifting somewhere in the dark. My flashlight trembled slightly in my grip. I turned again, and froze. The mannequin's head was now tilted, facing directly toward the store exit. Every muscle in my body tightened.